Okay, here we have a Scotsman SCCP30MA ice maker. And in the previous video we showed you how to change a pump, and we've also cleaned it all up and spiffed it up a bit. But we now have to change the hot gas valve, and to do that there's a couple of ways you can do it. One is you can just take the whole machine apart and lift the cabinet off the base, take the door off, remove the evaporator assembly on top, or at least move it out of the way. There may be a shortcut, possibly, if we can get in there to change this valve. Maybe remove this drain tube out of the way so it doesn't melt from the heat. We're going to attempt that first. But the first thing we're going to do, of course, is to drain all the Freon out, and we're going to do that now. So we have our charging column, which will put the Freon back into the charging column. And we'll open this up. Drain that out. Okay. Looks like we got it all out. It's holding the vacuum. That's a good sign. So we closed our valves off. Check and see how much Freon we pulled out of the system. It's reading 6.5, and I put 8 ounces in. So we'll have to recheck it for leaks after we change the valve. Okay, so here is the hot gas valve right here. And rather than take the whole machine apart, I'm going to see if we can find a shortcut. I moved the drain hose. You can see it back there. I'm going to remove this water line here, and I disconnect these wires, and I'm going to push everything out of the way, and I'm going to see if we can change this without taking the machine apart. I can use a torch with a really small tip, and we can unsweat it right here, and then get in there and put some kind of a guard or shield to protect the wiring. Alright, so I just pulled off the harness for the hot gas valve. Here is the other sweat joint right there. So once we disconnect it over here, we'll pull it forward, unsweat that, put the new valve in, and save ourselves a hell of a lot of work. Stand by. Okay, so here is a piece of aluminum that I put in here to prevent the wires from getting burnt. So we're going to unsweat this first. And I also took the insulation, I pulled it up and put a cable tie on there. So now we'll unsweat this. Okay, that's one part. Okay, so I got a couple of pieces of aluminum there to protect the wires, and you can see, the joint should be okay to protect the motor. So we're going to unsweat that, pull that out, and then we should be able to very easily get the new valve in without all that disassembly. Now this is a really small tip, so it's going to take a while to heat up. But I'd rather use a smaller tip. I don't want to cause any more damage. Okay, there it is. So now, that's the old valve. Here's the new valve. Here's the part number. And it goes on this way. It's got an arrow on it, right there. So now we'll let that cool down. We'll clean up the joints and then we'll sweat it back in. Okay, so we're cleaning out these sweat joints. As you can see, this end is swagged out. Okay, so on the hot gas valve, you have one side that's swagged out and the other one's not, so obviously the female can only go in one way, but there's also still an arrow on there so you can see. So we clean this out with the wire brush, sanded this down with some sandpaper, clean that out. This is all sanded, so now we're going to apply some flux and get some solder and get it in there. Okay, here's the flux that I use, and this is Harris silver solder. It's 56% silver. I like this because it flows a little better than the rods. Okay, so now we've got everything cleaned up. We'll put some flux on our joints in here, and also on this side. And then we're going to fit this in there. I hope you can see that. Okay, I'm going to swag that in, I'll sweat that in first, and then we'll hook up the other side. You want the solder to be drawn into the joint. Okay. Okay, so now we'll do the other end. Okay, now we're going to check it for leaks, and then we'll put everything back together. Now, by the way, this harness that came with the new valve, I'm not going to use this. I'm going to use the original one. But this is a great tool you can use by putting attaching a plug on this end so that you can plug it into an outlet, and you can use this to jump out water valves. I have one of these in my tool bag. So don't discard this, it's a great tool. Okay, so now we have our nitrogen tank hooked up. There we go. We'll open up the high side. Up to about 125. I would say maybe at least 150 pounds pressure to check for leaks. You can go higher than that if you want, but almost there. Let's get some soap bubbles. Okay, so we're about 150 pounds back. Back pressure and head pressure here, high side pressure. I'm going to shut off this tank. And then we're going to take our soap bubbles and just double check. Give it a light. Okay. Check these other joints while we're at it. That's it. We've got no leaks, so now we'll just put this back together, weigh in the gas, and test it out. Okay, so this machine takes 8 ounces of 134A, and we have almost 8 in there. We have 7.5. We'll just add a little bit more when the column is emptied out. So the machine's running at about I want to say close to a 30-inch, say maybe 29 inches of mercury. And now we're going to weigh the gas in. The water line is hooked up, the drain line is hooked up, and so stand by. Okay, so we're ready. Now this is the old valve that's going in the round file. That's no good. Charging column's hooked up, opened up, so we'll open up our gauge and we'll let this thing charge up. And when the column is empty, we'll close everything up. We'll add a little bit more since we're about shy, about a ½ ounce. Okay, stand by. I'm going to heat up the column a little bit here to force the gas in there, because as you're discharging the column, the temperature drops, and sometimes it might even frost up on you. So the heat will raise the pressure inside the column and force it into the machine. And then you watch the suction, the gauge, and you see the gauge start to come down. You'll know the column is empty. Okay, it's starting to drop now. Just want to make sure it sucks out all the vapors that's in the column. And then we'll just add a little bit more, ½ ounce more. Okay, that's good. We closed off the tank, the column. Those are valves. Okay. Okay, so we are going to add a little bit more Freon to this, just to put that extra ½ ounce in there. That's enough. You don't want to overcharge it. Okay, so now next thing is to let it run and produce ice, and then we can button up this project. Okay, so pressure is dropping, which means the ice is being formed. Any second now it's going to click into a harvest cycle and eject the cubes, and then we'll be able to test out our hot gas valve replacement. Okay, she just kicked into a defrost. It was about 0 pounds back pressure, and then she went into harvest cycle. So now we'll wait for the cubes to drop, and then we'll let it run overnight. hopefully come back tomorrow morning with a bin full of cubes. Okay, I see one cube down here. There's another one. There's another one. Okay, seems to be working okay, so we'll let it run overnight. Okay, just kicked out of the harvest, back into another refrigeration cycle. Starting to pull down, so at least we know the hot gas valve isn't getting stuck, so we've made the right diagnosis. Okay, that's about completes this video. So maybe one more check in the morning to make sure the bin is filling up. That's it for now. Okay, so this machine has been running for 24 hours and we got almost a full bin of ice. So we're looking pretty good. And we can just finish putting this machine back together. We'll put the cover, the grill on, and cover plate, and also the back panel. And that's it. One other thing that I wanted to mention: if you're a technician and you work on these machines, you might be wondering how I determined how the hot gas valve was bad. So when it came out of a harvest cycle, the back pressure, when the compressor kicked in, the back pressure never dropped down to normal pressure. It was around 60 pounds, and I just gave the hot gas valve a little whack with the screwdriver, and then the pressure came down. So that's how I knew that the valve was stuck. And then also, after I recovered all the refrigerant out, I ran the compressor and did what they call a sweep charge. And the sweep charge is allowing the compressor to run with the high side valve open, pulling all the air out of the system, and then weighing the gas in. So that's it for now on this machine. We do have another Sub-Zero Model 315 that has a Freon leak, which will be our next project. Okay, thanks for watching.